So we're here with Maisa. Can you tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for having me over. Pleasure to be in a podcast with such an incredible, exciting theme. So I'm CEO of Ayuta. Joined Ayuta last year. I think was around 1.5 years ago. And prior to that, I studied fashion, economics, international business. Worked at Farfetch, at Amazon Fashion in this space, and at Ayuta, we're building the AI operating system for the fashion industry, really focusing on visual content generation for fashion. That's a little bit about me and Ayuta.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to have to cover a lot in a short space of time because I've already got so many questions for you. What I really love to hear is people who build something that brings creativity into it. And it feels like you're combining creativity and code from studying fashion and now leading an AI company. When you think back to that shift, was it natural to sort of move from fashion design to AI? Or did it feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in a brand new world here, don't know the language, don't know what's going on? I'd love to know.
Actually, it felt incredibly natural. I think it was very, very natural shift. It's interesting because, well, I studied like I said, economics, international business before. Then I moved into fashion. The way my brain operated was a little bit different than most of my creative colleagues. I was usually thinking more about how to scale something or how to, the go to market of a collection. And when I was writing my master thesis, I decided to focus on fashion and technology. So, how the fourth industrial revolution was going to impact the creative industry, right? At the time, this was over 10 years ago. And I fell in love with the topic. At the time, started searching for companies that mix the two worlds together. That's how I found out about Farfetch. And then I discovered a product career, which was also something that was very new to me. And that was how I also entered in this space, was through product. And the product career, it's basically a combination of all my skills of business, but also understanding the industry, understanding the creative side of it. And it just like felt like it was meant to be. And I feel like that the more niche I get in my career, the more opportunities open up, which I know it sounds counterintuitive. Usually some people prefer to be generalists, right? Multiple reasons, but I'm finding, especially lately, that being an expert in a specific area or diving deep, like fashion and tech, has really, really helped me. And so I think that's why it felt really, really natural. And there aren't a lot of people that can take the subjectiveness of fashion, of style, and kind of build that or bring that into a systematic world of tech. And how do you translate, for example, a style through an algorithm? How do you teach what an aesthetic is, right? So there are lots of things that really require a little bit of creative mind, but also connection of something more objective like text. So yeah, I think it felt maybe way too natural, I would say.
That's so interesting what you've just said, because quite often people want to be everything to everyone, but actually people need to know what you're about and what you stand for and who to go to for something. And then they still might ask you for something beyond what you already do, but they've come to you for that thing. So I think that's a really useful lesson. Obviously, your niche has to be something people want, though, because if you've got this obscure niche no one's interested in, then you've got a problem. Can I ask, like, rolling all the way back, because you said your first degree, I think, was economics you studied. If you think when you were much younger, where were you? Were you the economics person? Were you the fashion person growing up? Or were you always this multidisciplinary kind of?
I have always been multidisciplinary. Even in school, like I would be on the theater classes, music classes, but also on the math competitions. So I always like to play into these different areas. And I think, moving into different majors was also me trying to explore the world and try and see where I fit in. And I really loved, and I found that fashion was fascinating. A lot of people look into fashion as something more creative, but it is creative, of course, but everyone in the world eats and gets dressed and sleeps, right? So there are a few things that we don't stop to think the impact that certain industries have, and I find it fascinating the impact that fashion has as well on culture, that fashion has on even on one's, for example, sense of self. How do I want people to perceive me? Why do I dress the way I do? What does the way I dress tells about me and my culture or social groups I want to fit in, you know? So I love that. And I love to study also the impact that history had, like fashion had in history as well. So just, yeah, ended up getting fascinated into this area and decided to scale using technology. So scale my knowledge and parts of the creative side of it, but also business side of it. Yeah.
That's so cool. When I was researching Ayuta, I obviously saw that it's helping people see how clothes fit on them and change the fashion industry. But outside of the creative and the tech side of it, I felt like there was an emotional layer similar to what you were saying. It's about self-perception, identity, it's about confidence. And I was wondering how intentional that emotional layer was for you when you first started building the project?
It's very intentional. Very intentional. I think especially a product like this. So we have two types of products. We have virtual try on with AI stylist, which essentially it's a stylist that helps you find what best to wear and you can visualize that on yourself. Our strength is really the visualization aspect of fashion. And then we also have Ayuta Studio, which allows brands to basically generate more diverse content, more content in general for their websites, for their campaigns, etc. Now, if we think of virtual try on, when I joined the team, so it already existed when I joined. So I'm a subject matter expert CEO that was brought in by the founders to bring in knowledge from the industry and shape the next generation of our product. At that time, there was already a virtual try on solution that was absolutely amazing. The team did a great job, especially on very sensitive things like body shape preservation, for example, on virtual try on, because when you're using generative AI to try clothes on, the way it works essentially is it goes and it looks into a photo, let's say Zara, of an item on a website, and it will try and understand what that item looks like, and then it will try and fit on your body type. And a lot of these technologies, if you test state of the art or many of our competitors as well, what happens is it makes you look skinnier, taller, similar to the original model where it got the information from, right? And basically the clothing information from. And when I joined, the team had already 87% accuracy, for example, on body shape preservation. And we decided to run a qualitative study. And I think this is where it gets super interesting on this emotional layer that I was mentioning before, which is we recruited people from very diverse backgrounds, being that, from uh, ethnicity perspective, body shape perspective, sexual orientation, etc. And our goal there was not only to test our virtual try on and how people felt trying clothes online and what were their emotions when they saw the results, but also we were noticing that a big percentage of customers, they've actually clicked on try on, about 40%, and they wouldn't upload a photo. So we wanted to understand, okay, if they're not uploading a photo, what's happening? And what if we put maybe a model that they could choose that that they resonate with? Is it because of the effort? What's happening, right? So we did this qualitative study and we were able to unpack so many things that shapes how we build our products now. For example, I'll give just one specific example, and I think that will say a lot already. We had one participant, he was Indian, and he was trying a red shirt on, and we were working really hard on body shape preservation because that was super important for us, and we wanted to make sure we were very diverse in sizes, etc. And what happened when he tried and we were watching him share the screen is that his skin got lighter. And why did that happen? Because obviously we were taking the information from the original model, and the original model was white, so it lightened his skin. And then we saw his first reactions, and he noticed that right away, right? He noticed that he mentioned, "I love this, is really nice, but one of the main reasons why I would use this tool is because I want to make sure that this color is going to look nice on my skin tone. But if you change my skin tone, I cannot understand that." Of course, this wasn't happening in all cases, right? There are hallucinations, so there were some instances, but when we saw that, we treated that as top priority. This cannot happen anytime. So let's make sure we come up with a solution where this never happens again. So the team then went back to R&D. They had a brilliant solution, a technical solution that is part of our IP right now on how do we make sure that we are preserving not only the body shape, but also the skin color, all the original features from the user. Then there was another case that was like disconnected to that study, but was more of a personal case where a friend of mine was pregnant and she was trying our solution as well. And what happened was it preserved her body shape, but it removed her belly. So we never trained on pregnant data. And again, another super interesting use case. And now I'm pregnant. I'm 8 months pregnant right now. And I'm testing with my own photos. And our new generation model preserves the pregnant belly. So those are things that we learn, but we need to be super intentional, right? So we need to make sure that we are inclusive in our research, that we are running our product by lots of different people with different types of backgrounds. Because yes, we try to think about every use case, but sometimes we will just miss things that are important that we're just because we're not just because we didn't test before, we weren't considering that. So yeah, so it's very emotional. I can tell you, that's just some examples of research that we run, but there's also the part of, this is also this part, but also the part of fashion of why do I dress the way I dress, and how do I want to be perceived, right? So there are also other nuances that we can go and have a whole huge conversation just about that. But I'll stop at those examples because I think they're quite powerful in terms of how we think and shape our products with AI.
They are. They really are. And this is what we love. We love intentional and responsible AI. Because if you're not making AI with humans in mind, with kindness in mind, with in some ways love in mind, then you're just harming others.
Exactly.
And especially in something like fashion, where it's so much about self-perception, about body and body issues, which we know that people are having a lot of issues with at the moment, you have to be completely intentional and mindful.
100%. And this goes again connected to that data point that I shared, right? That 40% of people that show intention they want to try, they're not uploading a photo. And we're still trying to figure out why. Is it effort? Is it because they realize, oh, never mind, I don't want to see myself? So yeah, so it's a huge challenge. There are lots of unanswered questions that we still have that we're looking into. But being intentional, especially leading a company that is focusing on AI, being intentional on how we train the models, what we teach to the models is extremely important, because your output is only going to be as good as your input. And so yeah, and we'll just expand existing biases if we are not very intentional about that.
Yeah, and you're kind of keep competing for attention, aren't you, as well? If I go and see myself not as I see myself, or suddenly I'm white, or oh, my pregnancy bump is gone, then do I come back as well? So you know that you're competing for that attention piece. But it's really interesting. There's a huge amount of psychology in there, isn't there, about why people, even in a physical shop, maybe can't be bothered to try on, or don't feel comfortable doing that. So there's probably more work to do. But great that you found that actually there could be people you're excluding and found a way to work on it. And that's the key, removing that bias that's in there, that has been in the shops forever. Because we think about all of those mannequins in the shop windows, they very rarely have a pregnancy bump. They very rarely have different tones of skin. And so you're doing something that the high street, occasionally some are starting to do, but they haven't done for generations, actually, have they?
Yeah, and there's always like the two sides of this conversation. So I heard there are some competitors that I think are brilliant as well in this space that are going into a different approach. So they are actually, you upload photos of yourself and then it creates an idealized version of how you should be looking like, right? So you look like a model. And then you try on clothes. Of course, that's, if I see myself as a model, it's much more not like, it's nicer and exciting and fun, and maybe I'm gonna browse more, right? And so there's always this balance, especially when we're operating in B2B, right? And we have our clients that they want to sell more, they want to return less, but then how do we strike the right balance between showing the reality versus what's inspiring for customers, and what do they think it's inspiring? Is it being diverse? Is it not being diverse? Why is the fashion industry operating like that for such a long time? Do we want to continue with those trends, or do we want to make the change? And yeah, I decided to go for the change. let's see what's gonna happen in next few years. Hopefully it will pay off. But that's really the direction that we're taking at Ayuta, is to preserve the user as they are and celebrate their bodies, celebrate their skin tone, celebrate what they want to try, right? So another example on that test that happened early, this was early stages of our product, was if I'm a girl and I want to buy menswear, that's totally fine, and the other way around. And what was happening was, for example, if male customers were trying female clothes, it could happen that the body shape would copy and it would change. So that cannot happen either. So all of those cases, right, are super important. And yeah, I decided to go for that direction, really. Let's see what's happening, like I said, in a few years' time.
Well, I'm all in favor of it because I think, we've already got all of these large language models just pleasing us. And it's great to just have some real reality, some realness there. So I'm totally in favor. But I'm going to switch it up a bit, just talk a little bit about your corporate life. You worked at Amazon and Farfetch, and now you're leading your own team. I'm curious to know, what did you take from these corporate spaces into the space you now lead? Yeah, and what did you consciously leave behind as well?
Course, of course. So I was very lucky to work in two incredible companies, where I was exposed to lots of very different ways of doing product as well. I think the key thing, if I answer also to leave behind, I'll leave behind bureaucracy. Big corporations have a lot of bureaucracy, but I'll go into more details in some more things that I think I would leave behind. From what I learned, I think especially on the topic of this podcast, which is diversity, I think Amazon was a very interesting place. For example, my last team there, we were about 20 people and maybe 15 different nationalities with different religious backgrounds as well. And so it was tough in a way. From a communication perspective, there was a lot of miscommunication because we were all, like most of us, not speaking the same cultural language, I would say. But on the other hand, there were so many different perspectives and brilliant minds looking into how products, how we would shape products and think about products. That was really, really nice. That level of diversity, I strive and I really wish one day we can get, because at Utah we're very small. Obviously, we're trying to be as diverse as we can, but we're not there yet, like Amazon can be, obviously, as a big organization. But then in another hand, sometimes diversity or even sustainability, those feel like a box ticking exercise in some cases. And like I said, and like the examples I gave you, I really don't want that to happen in a Utah. It needs to be part of our core development. So right now, when we're training a new model, now we're just releasing a new model this week. Body shape preservation, skin color preservation, all the things I mentioned, they're part of our evaluation parameters, the basic evaluation parameters. They're not box ticking. They're really just, this product cannot go live if it doesn't meet this criteria. Right? So I think this is also something I would leave behind. And then for me specifically and for Ayuta, my experience being the client that Ayuta has now. So Ayuta works with companies like Farfetch, right? So work with big corporations. I understand the ins and outs of what these companies need and what they're looking for, what they don't have, for example, with speed that we have. And so that's why startups collaborate pretty well with big corporations. And so this is something I was able to bring to Ayuta, which is the shortcuts of which problems do they need solving and it cannot solve internally. And for sure, what we're doing is one of them.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about culture and mirroring. Fashion has always mirrored culture, and now AI is a part of that mirror. Do you think that technology is changing the way we see beauty and individuality, or is it just reflecting what's already there?
I think right now it's reflecting what's already there, but we have the power to change that, like I said. So if you're not intentional, it's just going to expand existing biases. And this is what happens, if you use, let's say, if you use open source data to train your models, right? Or generic data that is on the internet, without being very intentional on how you're curating, how you're adjusting parameters, what you're actually measuring for, it's just going to mirror what is out there. So fashion is meant for tall, skinny people that look in a specific way that is very, within a little box of patterns. And yeah, so but we do have the ability to change that. So the fact that we have the ability, and I'm a big fan of AI, and I don't like to look at AI as something like evil that is just, expanding the biases of the society. It is true, but we can change that because AI will do whatever we tell it to do, whatever we teach it. And it's really on us, on humans that are leading and building, AI products to change that reality if we want to see a different world. So yeah, that's how I think about this specific mirror topic.
Yeah, I love that.
Is it something that's always mattered to you, this aspect of trying to be inclusive in the way you innovate, because you are leading IOTA and you're leading it in this direction, so there has to be a certain amount of conviction and I guess a real why for you in that. And I'd love to know more about
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this topic, and that's why I accepted to be in this podcast because I feel very strongly about it. I'm not sure if I've always been like this, but the first product I worked on at Farfetch was size and fit, and I was responsible for helping customers choose the best size for them. And Farfetch was a marketplace dealing with labels and brands from all over the world, so it was really hard to understand sizing schemes. So the deeper and deeper I got into research and data, the more I started learning about how unprepared the fashion industry was to handle so many of these topics. And like size and fit, okay, the main challenge was, okay, how do I have an easy to understand size chart? But then when I started listening to users and they said, well, actually, the way I decide size is I look at the model and I see if the dress is long on her, and then I see what's her height, and then that's why I figured out how the dress is gonna fit on me. Then we start looking into, okay, what are the sizes that we're selling most? We're selling most size small and small for women and medium for men. I wonder why, because those are the sizes we photograph. And then there are like so many correlations of connections of it started with size and then it just evolved to other things. And I think both companies that I worked on, Farfetch and Amazon, were very intentional as well on the a little bit, like I said, sometimes ticking, but many times were really intentional, especially Farfetch on the inclusivity studies and how it would make sure that all customers, especially operating in a global space, all customers were included into how we built our products. And I just felt fascinated. So I think I had really good schools in the two companies that I worked that made me, now that I have the opportunity to actually fully own a roadmap, to bring that and expand even further on what these companies were already doing in a good way. But I do think it was more on the research of size and fit that I started getting, I entered this rabbit hole of how do people feel, how do they perceive themselves, and what are the correlations of sizes that are sold versus what people see and the images that they see. And yeah, so I would say that.
I think it's a wonderful legacy to be part of changing the industry. If everyone makes small changes, who knows what it will look like in the future. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important. One thing I forgot to ask, where are you based today?
I'm based in London. I'm originally from Brazil, from a very tiny town in the border with Argentina.
Okay,
And yeah, and I live in London right now.
Nice,
fantastic.
nice.
Good to know. Good to know. So I think over to you, Leah.
Yeah, we're on to our quick fire round, which I love because I think that these are really fun questions usually. So I will get into it. If AI were a fashion designer, whose energy would it have and what kind of collection would it create?
I think it's impossible to choose one fashion designer for
No.
AI. AI is a collective, I would say, consciousness of designers. It will be a combination of many. The type of collections it would create, it would co-create with the users. So basically, each person will be able to share a little bit about themselves, and then AI would create something that will suit their unique personality, body shape, skin color, etc. I think that, and that's how flexible AI is, and that's the whole point of why we need to teach what to do. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's one designer. It's a combination of multiple.
Yeah, love that. What's one moment in your career where you thought, okay, this is the future?
There are so many like product related. I think for Ayuta specifically right now, it has been the feedback we get from brands and from retailers. So lately I've been in meetings with the highest luxury brands that you can think of, or most famous retailers in the world, and they're all validating what we're doing. They're all saying that our approach is the right approach to how we're thinking about the future of synthetic content generation, the future of virtual try-on. So all this validation really makes us understand that this is really the future. And then also in parallel to that, big tech providers like Google, Amazon, Microsoft are also entering in this space, specifically in fashion, which is very interesting. And it proves that there's definitely something here. and it's going to be the next big change, I would say, in the way people experience fashion virtually and digitally.
Nice. Cool. And finally, if you could redesign one part of the fashion industry with AI with no limits, what would you start with?
I think I have one more important use case and another use case that is more personal, probably more selfish. The more important one would be, in the ideal world, we don't even manufacture clothes that people are not going to like or buy, right? So we would remove waste from the get-go, leveraging AI for that. So understanding first what users want, letting them try, experience, and understand what this is going to look like in the real world, and only then we manufacture, just to avoid waste in the industry. It's one of the most wasteful industries in the world. And then the selfish use case would be, this is what I'm building for and what I'm most excited for is, let's say there's a marketplace that I love the curation. I love the items that are there, but I don't like to see the styling of those items in that specific website because it's just not me. And now imagine that I'm browsing and I love that selection, but the styling is happening in real time in front of me, either on a model that I selected or on myself. And I can see these different combinations of outfits being put together, instead of having to look at a photo of an outfit of an item that maybe I actually like, but is just styled in a way that is not really me. So I do think that this hyper personalization on a visual scale, it's really the next thing that I'm most excited about to build. And it's more of a selfish use case because I would love to shop like that. But yeah, I would say those two are the key things that come to mind.
When I was growing up as a little girl, you used to get these magazines and there'd be a little paper model, and then there were you could take bits of clothes and you could combine them together and make the perfect image, put the hat on, the shoes, the trousers, and I feel like it's that going from different websites, going from different brands, and being able to put it all together to make your outfit. So I'm totally in favor of that personal idea. Make it happen for us, please,
Yeah,
please,
we're
please.
there. We're on track for that. That's the future.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute
Yeah,
pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for giving us a bit of your time today. It's been really
It
insightful. I
has.
haven't
Yeah.
really thought so much about AI and fashion, and so this is a first for our podcast, actually.
really